Hi, this is video on the consensus page, so it is page specific. Generally what happens is people walk through just set, sometimes they go ahead and pick one, and they build up different sets of suggestions, and each set of suggestions is slightly different because what determines the suggestions are the bacteria which are selected. And each of the ways here will select bacteria using different set of rules. What is the correct set of rules? We don't know. All we have is we have the top ones, some experts, and the bottom are some statistical methods which are pretty standard. And we're simply going through and saying, okay, let's try all of them and see if we can find substances which everybody agrees you should be taking or avoiding. And that is probably your safest list. Going for the ones which are safest and stop having as part of your regular activities the ones which are to be avoided. So here we have actually this particular person, we have 9 different packages of suggestions. And all we need to do is click here. And the new page is loaded. And what we have, if we go to the very bottom, go down, is you see there's 527 different substances listed. The top priority ones are sitting at the top. Again, keyword is these substances are the words used in the studies. Sometimes, like for example, this particular one, you say, what in the world is that? You may have to go over and Google it. And brown seaweed, there it is. And they were using an extract from brown seaweed, this particular one in their studies. So technically they weren't using brown seaweed, but for most effective purposes it is brown seaweed. Or you may be able to buy this directly as a supplement. If you hit, let's take our usual source for everything, which is and nope, we don't find it listed per se. We have all sorts of other things, but none of them are that. So it's probably going over and looking for brown seaweed, and we get roasted seaweed, we get brown seaweed extract capsule. So that is probably a reasonably good match for what the suggestion is. Okay, so it goes there from decreasing numbers and works its way down. Now, for most people, one of the things you may want to do is, instead of scanning 527, you may want to look at things in categories. For example, let's look at herbs and spices. And then we have the variety of herbs and spices. Marijuana probably means brownies, not smoking it. And go, a lot of them are Chinese herbs, which may or may not be hard for you to get hold of. And goes down there. Sometimes the Latin name is used, and usually I try putting the plain English name after it. Things like cinnamon, allspice, you can see there. But then if you get to the next page, we now get into things that should be avoided. If you go to the very last page, you can see things which you should probably avoid totally. And notice we have a specific type of seaweed that should be avoided. Again, rather than simply saying, oh, you need to take some seaweed, we talk because the research is explicit which types you should or shouldn't take. So we can go back here and we could go over the suggestions don't have antibiotics, which means if you click there you have absolutely nothing there. If you take a look at probiotics, you can see the ones you should have in there. And again, if you go to the next page, you'll see ones which you should not have. It has a negative value. So that's basically how the page works. These numbers are an algorithm based on the numbers over here. The numbers over here looks at suggestions two ways. One is the number of times one of your suggestions says take, and number of times one of your set of suggestions says avoid. So we have a 7-to-1 ratio here. But if you take a look at all of the estimated values from taking it, we end up with 6.49. For the avoid values, we have 3.14. So a combination of those two is used to eventually compute out what the priority is. Now you can go and double check the priority by looking at here and say, okay, is that a reasonable number or not? Or you could actually work from those numbers. I've been requested to add a single number for the brain fog so that they don't have to try figuring out the logic here. When I first put up the page, I was more interested in getting the details rather than ease of use. So now this revision is with ease of use. What is important to note is I have a download here, and the download will there, and it will come on download. Give me a second. And the download is over here with all the details, so you can go in and proceed to make use of that. Just a different way of looking at it. Generally online with this change is easier because you can just go in and toss in or look for a word such as cacao, and you can see what its rating is, and you can see it is a good rating, and you can see that it was suggested 7 times and there are 9 samples and was never told to avoid it, and the net estimated value or the probability of being helpful was 17.8, but probability of not being helpful or being detrimental, it was 5.8. Again, these numbers are odds, and they're based on the number of bacteria it impacts and the number of studies which are being done on cacao and those bacteria. So it ends up being very complicated, and this number is trying to do a simplification of all of that type of thing. This number is the one you probably want to work with because it is clean and simple, and you don't need to do much. If you want to get rid of it, you can get rid of it there. If you, for example, are interested in just lactobacillus, then you can see it here, and you can see which lactobacillus is the best and go there. Or you can go in and look at minerals and vitamins, which ones are high priority. Magnesium, selenium are there, and then you actually will get things which you probably should not take. This is interesting because usually I don't see vitamin B12 as an avoid. In this case it is, and it's avoid because 7 times it says to avoid, 2 times it says to take. Net benefit is higher and than the net take, but because of the number of times it was said to avoid, it ends up being a negative. Again, this is a detail. I am applying a formula here. You may or may not think the formula is right in every single case. That's why the raw numbers are still there. Okay, that is it. Simple 1-page introduction.